Welcome back to Eye on Foxborough. I'm Karen Guregian, and I'm thrilled to have my colleague and award-winning columnist, Matt Vautour, joining me. Hi, Matt.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. We're going to do something a little different today, kind of a universal Boston sports topic. This morning, on MassLive's website, I came out with a top 18 list of Boston's most hated villains. Of course, the villains span all all of our local sports. Matt did a similar list, right? About 6 years
I
ago.
did back in 2018. It's actually one of the first columns I wrote for MassLive back in the
Wow.
back in the day. So
With the exception of the number one enemy, which we agreed on 6 years apart, we didn't agree on much. So I'll quickly go in my reverse order 10 to 1, even though I did 18, and we can kind of talk about them and also talk about what makes a villain. Okay. For me, from 10 on down, number 10, I had Rex Ryan. I had the Manning brothers, number 9. I had Eric Mangini, 8. Bernard Pollard, 7. Ulf Samuelson, 6. Jack Tatum, 5. Bill Lambier and the Bad Boy Pistons, 4. Alex Rodriguez, 3. Kyrie Irving, who will be in town Thursday, 2. And Roger Goodell, number 1. Um, when you came up with your list, Matt, how did you come up with someone's villain status?
well, it's kind of a mixture of things. It was, there's you hate anybody that you think did you wrong, and so that's why both of us have Roger Goodell there. We thought that I'm you and I haven't even talked about this, but I'm assuming it just basically came from it the heavy-handedness and the complete ignoring science that put the Tom Brady suspension where it was. And so I looked at guys that you hated um, for for guys that caused injury. And so the Matt Cook, Matt Cooks and Elf Samuelsons were pretty easy choices to have on that list. And then other guys that just kind of prevented the teams from reaching the goals that they wanted, certainly the goals that the fans want. It's funny, we both had A-Rod in our list, and almost in hindsight, I think A-Rod is almost like I don't know. It's almost in hindsight, and I didn't really think about this until this morning, but A-Rod almost isn't a villain because he's laughable in the way that he always kind of got beaten by the Boston teams. He's the guy who got in trouble for doing the smack of Bronson Arroyo and not trying to knock the ball out of the glove, and the guy who Veritek put the glove in his face. And you kind of, when you think of the scary Yankees of the Derek Jeter era, they stopped being intimidating when they got A-Rod, which is
He was
funny
the
because he
guy
was
who
the
couldn't
best
win.
player in baseball at the time.
He was the
Hmm?
guy who couldn't win for the longest time.
Yeah, exactly. He, he
But
he he was the best player in baseball at the time. But Boston fans hated him. But I think now, if you look back at him, they almost hate him in sort of a laughing at him sort of way now, because and I wrote a column when he retired that Boston fans are going to miss A-Rod because
pick up.
he was the literally the guy that he was the guy that was the Washington Generals. He was the Washington Generals on so many great Boston sports memories.
Well, he kind of took over, I thought, kind of as the poster boy of the rivalry,
True.
there was he almost became a Red Sox. The Red Sox
Right.
actually completed a trade for him that was later put the kibosh on by the league, I believe.
It was the Players Association. He was willing to take less money to go
Right.
to
And they
the
didn't
Red
want
to
that.
go to the
Right.
Red Sox
Yeah.
because he wanted to go someplace he could win. and the Players Association said you can't just straight give money back to influence a trade. So,
Well, as I
but
said, I just sort of considered him the poster boy of the Yankees
so did I, and I
in
put him on
that
my list
day. But
in that time.
and the thing that the fans are drawn to was, the moment he went, started going after Bronson Arroyo
Right.
after by getting hit by a little soft pitch, and then Veritek intervened. And again, that the picture of Veritek with his glove in his face is historic.
Oh
So
yeah, it's in every sports bar. It's in every sports bar in New England.
um so that's kind of where, I mean, again, not a bad guy, more of like a, like you said,
He's a
he's more like
doofus.
a Washington, yeah, Washington general. But there's other people on the list. I was debating this with a friend of mine, and it's like, why do you have guys on the list who are just doing their job? You know? And the answer is because doing their job inflicted pain and torture and turmoil on the Boston sports scene. The Manning brothers are a great example.
Sure.
Eli Manning is he doesn't harm anyone. He doesn't flip off fans. He just sort of beat you in two Super Bowls. And it's not like he was this earth-shattering all-world quarterback. He wasn't Tom Brady, but yet he kept making the plays that made fans suffer.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that he was a Manning and you already didn't like Peyton because of the rivalry, the fact that he was a Manning added to it. It would be like somehow if Chip Jeter was beating the Red Sox in some kind of baseball situation.
Yeah. I was going to ask, 6 years have passed. Is there, like, you didn't have Kyrie Irving on your list because he was sort of a good guy
He was
back
still in
then.
the Celtics at that point. He was still in the Celtics when I wrote that.
Um,
Um,
how prominently would you have him on the list now? I had him at number two, and he could move up depending
Yeah,
what happens.
he'd belong pretty high. He'd belong pretty high. I think if you talk if you think I think if you were to ask Boston fans now who they like the least in the sport, I think he might be, especially because the Patriots haven't been relevant enough in the past couple of years for Roger Goodell to matter. I think the fervency of the current hate is pointed high, mostly Kyrie Irving, and certainly the fact that they're about to play them in the finals matters. I feel like the LeBron hate, and I had LeBron high on my list
I didn't
because
have him at all.
I had him three, but and they he'd knocked the Celtics out of a bunch of postseasons, and with Miami and with Cleveland at that point. But I feel like that has faded. I think that's faded a little bit. So yeah, I think Kyrie is a top three guy, and might be, might end up he might end up being number one. I mean, what do you have to do in this series? Not a lot. Not one hard foul on somebody, one nasty quote, one. I mean, I think if he were to give the fans the finger again, that doesn't change much because I think the fans would love it if he did that. They'd be excited by that. But
I
I
also,
think he's
yeah, he's up there. I also think Luka Doncic has a chance to jump on that list.
he has that personality for sure. He absolutely has that personality for sure. I think he could get there. So he makes a couple big shots, says something, and he'll he's his personality would be to potentially yell at the Garden crowd too. Now whether he's yelling nasty stuff in English and then saying it's Slovenian or just yelling stuff in Slovenian, he definitely has that club in his bag.
Yeah, I have people on my list, again, for a variety of reasons. Some of them, like, I think in Kyrie's case, there's some people who believe he betrayed the organization, betrayed the fans. I have Eric Mangini on the list because he betrayed, was like a Judas to Bill Belichick, and he's kind of prominent on my list. but then you have a character like Rex Ryan, who I believe is on your list too.
He is, yep.
It's almost like he's a stooge,
He is. It's true, but he's still taking pot shots
shots.
at the
Yeah.
Patriots sitting there with his spray tan and over whitened teeth on the set of the pregame show there. He's still keeping he still doesn't want Patriots fans to forget how much they dislike him, so that he's keeping it going. The guy on my list that I had that you didn't, that I actually think I would have had higher in hindsight, is Clemens.
Mm.
Because in a lot he's kind of Kyrie light in that he talked all about that he would never go to the Yankees when he was a player, and that that he was um that that the rivalry meant something to him, and then um, when he went to both the Blue Jays and then New York, I mean, he would say he'd be kind of negative, and to some degree, he softened that by he was more anti-ownership than anti-team or anti-Boston or whatever. But he certainly he launched himself into the rivalry, and was involved in some in some pretty fierce games and involved. I think he was a guy that he's not nearly as bad as Kyrie, but and then when he became kind of Clemens became a steroid guy, that kind of fixes him more as a bad guy in people's mind. And then when there was rumors the Red Sox were even talking about trading back for him one of the years that he went back to the Yankees, and he had chosen. No, I think they were looking to sign him at that point. Um, and he chose to go back to the Yankees rather than going back to Boston.
Well, I'd say he was like my first runner up. But I do remember, it's funny when he first left and became a Blue Jay, and I remember sitting in the stands his very first appearance back, and the fans still loved him, and they loved it when he walked off the field and pointed up in the direction of Dan Duquette's box.
Right.
And but I think, like as you said, he crossed the line when he joined the joined the Yankees.
A little bit
Um,
of that with Wade Boggs too, when he got back up on the horse there after the way he had done and even a little with Johnny Damon. Although Johnny Damon wasn't nearly as successful with the Yankees as he'd been with the Red Sox.
Now I made a huge leap, and I actually had John Henry on my list, and which is kind of odd because the man it was the owner of the team that broke the curse and won 4 World Series, and he should be anointed as a hero, and he was during that time. But I just think what's happening now, or it's happened now with the Red Sox in the past few years, um, with him kind of being more interested in all of his other teams, Liverpool and the Penguins and race car and whatever the heck else he's involved in. He's
PGA.
kind of, yeah, he's taken his foot off the wheel of the Red Sox, and he's made a big market team a small market team in terms of their spending. And I think it's really gotten the ire of fans. I could be wrong, but
No,
you know.
it's absolutely a fair thing, and it just really strikes me as strange because he has more money than he could ever spend. And when the Red Sox were spending like a big market team, it's not like he was losing money on the Red Sox. He's still making money in the Red Sox, and so there must be some formula that says he's making more money this way than he was before. But still, I mean, he was making money, and so when you've reached that point money wise, and I have no idea, this is because I'm certainly nowhere close to his tax bracket, but it would seem like at that point the only thing then you've got is legacy. Like John Henry should be somebody they should want to build a statue to. They should want to rename Jersey Street Henry Street some day down the road if he had done it right. Like if he kept treating them like a big market team and kept making money and kept contending, Red Sox should be contenders every year, and they should be contenders for every big time free agent that fits them. You can do it intelligently without you can do it intelligently without just going over the top. But you still have to be in there for some of those guys. You still have to be thinking about making the Juan Soto trade when the Yankees did it and that kind of thing. It's all that's left for John Henry at this point is legacy. And on top of that, I have to think the Red Sox being good makes the Globe more financially whatever, and he owns the
Which he also
Globe.
owns. Yeah.
Yeah, so what so you'd think that one would help the other, and so the idea of doing this and treating it this way just seems crazy to me. Like
Yeah.
they could have been better this year. They could have signed players this year
They could
to
have been better
take them.
last year
Yeah.
too. They did, do nothing at the deadline, they compete, and maybe if they're got a player or two or three, but he's just not willing to do that anymore. And is it, I know he's a very smart man, and it would seem like he doesn't understand the fan base or where he is. But by the same token, he is also smart enough to know that people are going to still go to the games. People love to go to Fenway. Out of towners like to go to Fenway. So he hasn't quite, I don't think he's quite been hit in the pocket yet.
No, and I don't know that he ever will be because if people stop going to the games, if people stop going to the games, then they hire less people at the park at that point. It would have to be the Nesson revenue would have to drop drastically, and the national revenue would have to drop drastically, and that's I mean
Yeah.
that's unlikely to happen in a way that would affect John Henry to that degree.
Yeah. Another kind of controversial hero villain type I had on the list was Bill Parcells. And the biggest reason, obviously he was one of the biggest parts of the franchise being resurrected from the gutter, when he was hired, not by not by Bob Kraft, but by James Orthwein. Again, he brought them, helped give them relevance again. And but the way he went out, kind of conspiring with the Jets during the Super Bowl, paving his exit, really, really didn't sit well with fans, to the point where he's been nominated 5, 6, 7 times to get into the Patriots Hall of Fame, and the fans will not vote him in. Part of that is, he's going up against, some rather popular players, but I would have thought by now, if his departure wasn't such a big deal, he might have gotten in.
Well, if the Patriots wanted him in the Hall of Fame already, they'd have put different people on the ballot, they'd have framed it as such to make it so he'd be in. I have no problem with what they're doing though, because for some of those Patriots players, that might have been their only chance.
At a Super Bowl, at a
Yeah.
title. Yeah. So,
And so you end up in a scenario where everybody else is putting everything, all their dreams, all their whatevers to try to win a Super Bowl. And Bill Parcells is already, is already thinking about what color carpet he wants on his Jets office. It's you can't it's ridiculous. And so for him to do that, and the Patriots had never won at that point, and honestly, the city of Boston had gone a long time without winning. Like that's a pretty unforgivable thing. If you want to coach someplace else, if you think that this is not the situation you want, wait 2 weeks, wait a
mm,
month. You're Bill Parcells. You're getting a job. You're getting, you'd be the number one candidate for 10 jobs if you wanted it. So just wait. There's no reason that this has to had to go the way it did. And I think it was kind of a disgraceful way of doing it. He's kind of said after the fact that he didn't handle it in a good way. And so um I think it's fair for people because everything he's done since since that playoffs he hasn't done anything that that is a good thing. He hasn't fixed anything with the Patriots. He was, he had kind of an ugly relationship with Belichick for a while. They went and they pulled the Curtis Martin stunt. The way they framed that contract to pull him away. He was great for a stretch, but he left it on for pretty understandably ugly terms.
And and later in life, he's acknowledged such, that the way he went about that, he perhaps could have taken a different path. So, um, but anyway, there's one person on my list that I haven't seen on any others over time, and that's Alan Eagleson, who was the agent who represented Bobby Orr. And for the longest time, Harry Sinden had villain status because, how could you let the greatest player of all time, at that point, the greatest defenseman of all time, walk, which is what happened. But
Yeah, no, that was a great. I thought that was a great call. I thought on your list that like when I read that, as soon as I read it, I thought, oh man, I wish I'd thought of Alan Eagleson when I'd written mine before. I thought that was a terrific call because the image of Bobby Orr in a Blackhawks uniform makes people wince, and that is before I was not alive for Bobby Orr's career, and yet and I still wince at seeing that just because from hearing my dad and so forth like that it was that significant. I think I thought that was a terrific call by you, and maybe even belonged higher like because what he did was so
heinous.
specifically
Yeah.
was so specifically awful.
For those who don't know, um, he misrepresented, as Bobby's agent, who was dealing with the Bruins at the time, he misrepresented their offer to Bobby. So Bobby was like upset. It's like, they weren't going to pay him. They weren't. But what Eagleson forgot to mention was that they were giving him like 10% of the team, you know, and you know, obviously the belief was that he was getting paid off to deliver Bobby to Chicago, and that's exactly what happened. And Bobby later found out, with the help of uh, the late Russ Conway, who worked at the Lawrence Tribune, did some investigative reporting and discovered, that deals were made, and Eagleson didn't tell Orr the truth. And so Bobby finished his career in Chicago, which still, as I said, it just doesn't sit right.
Eagleson went to prison at one point, didn't he? After
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Uh, but is there anyone else that you would have on your list today, outside of Kyrie Irving?
Anybody that I didn't have before outside of Kyrie Irving. I mean, you could make a Matt Kachuk case if you're talking recent. He's been somebody that certainly has tormented and
I had
haunted
Sam
the
Bennett as honorable
yeah.
mention.
And Sam Bennett for for certainly that two-game back-to-back stretch in there. I think the fact that Marchand absolved Sam Bennett probably took some of that away. But I mean, Matthew Tkachuk was the one that trying to pick a fight with Linus Olmark, and he had he'd had the cheap shot hit behind the play on Garnet Hathaway last year, and he certainly is somebody that he's a classic guy that Bruins fans would love if he was on the Bruins and hate him
Yeah.
where he is. But I think if you were making that list of active villains, he'd be pretty high on it. But would he make a top 20 list? Would I bump somebody for him? I don't know.
Historically. Yeah,
Yeah,
historic.
there's quite a few in there. It's funny right now. There's kind of no Yankees that you hate today. There's nobody that you look at the Yankees and think, boy, I really loathe that Giancarlo Stanton. You don't feel that way right now, and that I think that's kind of made the rivalry dip some. There's
It's
nobody there
actually
that has a particularly
likable.
hateable personality, and Aaron
Like,
Judge is very likable. Yeah,
yeah, Judge. It can't. It's hard to hate him.
I mean, they even had guys back in, when you're talking back in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, you hated Paul O'Neill, Red Sox fans did. The Scott Brocious and but a bunch of Kevin Brown. There's a bunch of
Like
those guys that weren't even
Billy
that
Martin,
significant. Yeah.
George Steinbrenner, whatever was in pinstripes, you hated because you kept losing to them. But since the things have changed. The Red Sox finally got over that hurdle. It's kind of, I don't want to say dulled the rivalry,
When the
but
Red Sox have been good enough to matter, the Yankees have not been a impediment anymore.
yeah. Well, let's get back to Kyrie Irving a bit and the upcoming series with the Celtics. And can you make a say if the Celtics are expected to win, they've been the best team the whole year. They've cruised through the playoffs. Is there an equivalent, say, if they don't win, something, a
It's kind of
team?
it is it's interesting because you're the first thoughts are the undefeated Patriots team and last year's Bruins team. As far as those teams, you certainly that Patriots team was expected to win a Super Bowl because Patriots teams very much won Super Bowls at that point, and that looked like on paper the best of them. The Bruins, it would have been like if the Bruins had made it to the Stanley Cup Finals last year and lost, you'd have looked at it like, all right, well, sometimes the best team doesn't always win in hockey. Last year's Bruins team is a strange one because their failure was losing in the first round as much as it was not winning the whole thing. I mean, it's hockey, and you never best team almost never best regular season team almost never wins. And we're seeing that now with Edmonton against Florida. That's a good series, but it's not the number one seed on either side. And so um,
Are you
we
predicting them to lose? The Celtics, because the best team.
no, no, I'm saying they must never win in hockey. That the best team always never wins in hockey. So
Yeah,
in basketball, the best team's supposed to win, and they do a lot of times. It hasn't happened quite with the same regularity as it did when the Celtics, the Lakers, the Bulls were winning. But boy, and this season's been strange considering there's been 14 series to this point, and the higher seed has only won 8 of them. And that's that doesn't that's I would guess, I haven't gone back and looked. I would guess that that's more unusual than normal, especially the fact that it continued to happen this deep into the postseason. But for this Celtics, unlike that undefeated Patriots team, which had already won Super Bowls and Tom Brady already had a legacy as a winner, it'll be different for this group because it'll hang around the necks of this group because it'll be oh, they can't win the big one, they can't win the big one, which is always an oversimplification of everything, but doesn't matter. That it'll be true in people's minds, and that's enough to make it true in that situation because that's what happens. If this will speak to Jason Tatum, this will speak to Jaylen Brown. There will be questions about Joe Mazzulla and to lesser degree Brad Stevens if they don't win, and they're expected to right now more than any team has in a while. They have the most talent. The You can say that Luka Doncic is the best player in this series, and I think he is. But after, if you go talent for talent in the starting five and the bench and so forth, thinks the Celtics should be better.
you
Celtics are
should.
better defensively. They're better and better in a lot of places. And the difference in backcourts is closer. The Mavericks have a better backcourt, perhaps, but if you're going Holiday and White against Irving
Gotcha.
and Doncic,
Yeah.
but that's closer than it would be the Celtics, Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis, or even Tatum, Brown, and Horford to the guys that the Mavericks are going to throw out there who are kind of no names. They should win. And if they don't, it's going to be hard for the Celtics to determine where to go next.
Yeah. Well, you and I will get to write about it, and we'll be there on Thursday night for
Looking
game one
forward to it.
and the rest of the series. Well, thank you, Matt. This was
Absolutely.
nice to do something different. Uh, Talk about the historical villains that
Just
have
have to see if anybody else, see if
tormented,
Irving moves up on either of our lists.
right? Or as I said, I'm guessing Doncic is going to get on that list before too long.
Could be somebody totally unexpected. Derek Lively could hard foul Jaylen Brown go into the basket, and that would it changes his. He
Yeah.
goes from no name to hated very quickly.
Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Uh, Thank you, Matt, and I'll see you on Thursday.